So this is a macro view, busy slide. Some of you guys might have seen this before, where if we were coming to a site and doing a full critical risk management implementation, we'd essentially follow this whole process, and the stuff on the outside is the artifacts or deliverables that are produced by doing the different steps in the different phases. So if we're thinking now in the area of controls and critical controls, in my view, pretty useful for me to talk through what are some of the tests and steps we take to go on that journey. Because that may be useful, and through that there could be some stuff there, Dan, that could be some simple tests that you're just not seeing or aren't being done in the areas that you're looking at, that if it was done might help clarify that. So I'll talk macro view, and then we'll go and look at some of these things maybe in a bit more detail. So following the process, if we think about from a critical risk management perspective, like the controls need to come from some type of risk process. And unfortunately, we sometimes see this where we say, okay, here's our list of critical controls, and I say, great, where'd they come from? And it's like, well, they're just our critical controls. So we know we need to have some type of risk-based view, and generally it's a bow tie in the critical risk framework that we use to then go and plonk, identify our pathways, where do they live, etc. So in that process, there's a few tests that we deploy. One, there's a definition. I don't have it pictured here, but a definition of a control. I'll go and find that shortly. So one, is it the simple things like, is it act, object, or a system, specific, measurable, and auditable? Is it linked to a management system? And is it relevant to the risks? There's like 5 fundamental definition things that oftentimes when we see critical controls don't even pass that step 1 bit. Then there's step 2 here, which we'll go and look at the graphic, which is around separating out controls, what we call controls, from a support activity and a verification activity to what's a true control. So that's another test we can do. And then once they've sort of passed those 2 things, then there's the idea of control effectiveness assessments. So a different lens, then which kind of includes the hierarchy of controls is control of effectiveness. It's just a different way of doing it, and we can go and have a look at that shortly as well. And then once we've done that, then we go through the flow chart, which you've seen. I'll go and show that, which then, we've got some extra steps which essentially consider all of these things. So we're like, we can't consider a control to be critical if it doesn't pass these first 3 rounds of validations. And someone's just joined us, I think Christina. So welcome, Christina. We're just talking about controls and the journey to critical controls. All right, so I'll go backwards. Just bear with me. Lucky I've got this pack here to go through. I'm just going to scroll up, because when we're in the masterclass, we actually spend a fair bit of time on controls because we want to get it right. Hang on, bear with me. In here. All right. So some of you may have seen these terms before. Has anyone heard of act object system before? Dan's nodding. Pat, I'm going to guess say yes. Paul, Nick, have you guys seen that term? Yep. Cool. And I'm sorry, I can't see Christina. Anyway, all good. Okay, and then this one for me, which I'm really hot to trot on, which I don't see well, and certainly is what we try and unpack when we do bow ties, is they'll say, okay, well, okay, vehicle separation. So yeah, we've got the 50-30 rule where 50 meters if you're a pedestrian on the ground, 30 meters if you're in heavy vehicles between separating from other plant. And when we do bow ties, we don't say, okay, put 50-30 in there. It's like, okay, what's the document or the management system that ensures you do 50-30 rule? So it's like, well, we've got the SOP for blah, 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 blah. Cool. Or they might be saying, yeah, we've got maintenance strategies for mobile plant. Cool. All right. What's the specific maintenance strategy? Just don't make it up. Let's link it to the management system. So that's one of the tests we do, and often when we actually end up doing bow ties is we create all these gap analysis because there's some stuff that people say they do, but it's not actually in the management system somewhere. Anyway, I digress. So we call that step one. Skip over all this. And then this is the chart, which you guys might have seen before or may not. Again, I'll make this bigger. So what we're looking to do now is separate out. And again, this could be a useful framework to start to drop off these admin-y things. Dan. So for example, in this framework, so support activities are those things that maximize the health of a control. So they would be things like maintenance, training, education, procedures, SHMSs, and all that sort of stuff. They're not necessarily frontline direct controls, but they support it. And then anything that's like, reports, inspections, any other checks generally fall over there in that bucket. They're not direct controls. And so time and time again, like we'll see, what's one of the classic ones is supervisor inspections. It's like everyone throws that in on bow ties. And then when we apply this test, it's like, okay, yeah, it's great that you do that, but that's actually not a direct control. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. So I'm not sure if you've seen this before. I can throw, well, this is recorded anyway, so you can come back and have a look at this. And then when we get into the control effectiveness assessment, so have you guys done control effectiveness assessments before? I've got to look over this way. It's where I can see you. Have you done control effectiveness in some way, shape, or form in a previous life? And girls? Yep. Okay. So this one, I mean, there's a few, and ultimately all we're looking to do is just give it some type of criteria, aren't we, an evaluation. This one here is not too bad, which is like a 2-part scale to ultimately get our controls to end up on this framework. What's highly adequate versus very good adequacy, marginal, poor is orange, and then not worth the paper it's written on in the red. So we'll go through all of that. I'll skip out. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm going to unpack that one. To then, if I get down to critical controls, pull this back together. They are, so if you know how you're saying, Dan, the ICMM pathway, that's their generic stuff here. And then what we've just added on is all of those tests that which I verbalized, must be met, and the answer must be yes, to then continue on. And one of the things that not a lot of organizations do is setting a benchmark for control effectiveness. So in my mind, why would I consider a control to be critical if it gives me marginal adequacy or less? So I think again, that like you're saying, would admin-y controls come out in the green? Maybe not if they've passed all of those tests. And then maybe the final bit here, and then I'll stop talking, is I've changed the language where we used to have this and just say this used to be just, well, it is a critical control. Now we've moved the dial on that, because potentially if I do a bow tie which has got 60 critical, let's say 60 controls, and I could do the test and then potentially, let's say 20 come out as, well, the new language is eligible. What I don't want, and this is the trap we used to fall into, is, okay, well, all 20 pass the test, therefore all 20 are critical. And we end up in this big unhelpful discussion. So we've now moved the needle, say, okay, well, these 20 are eligible for selection. Then there's some extra tests you can do to work out of these 20, what are going to be the critical few.